Every time the Democrats attack us and attack our movement, they can't help but tell on themselves. They reveal how much they hate the American people. Now remember this. Remember, Barack Obama said we cling to God and guns. Remember that? Hillary Clinton called us deplorables. And now Kamala Harris says we're weird. Well, Kamala, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about some things that are weird. We think it's weird that Democrats want to put sexually explicit books in toddlers' libraries. We think it's weird that the far left wants to allow biological males to beat the living crap out of women in boxing. We think it's weird for a presidential candidate to bail convicted rapists and murderers out of prison, and that's what Kamala Harris did. And I think it's especially weird when Kamala Harris comes to Atlanta. I believe came here to this arena. Kamala Harris comes to Atlanta and talks with a fake Southern accent, even though she grew up in Canada. You can't make it up. That's pretty weird. Go watch the clip. She sounded like a Southern belle, even though she grew up in Vancouver. It doesn't make any sense.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
But on November 5th, she can go back to using her San Francisco accent, because we're going to send her packing and we're going to re-elect Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
What's up, guys? Welcome to a Rescue Michigan Midsummer Night's stream. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Just me tonight, unfortunately. No co-hosts. I know, I'm sad too. But thank you guys for tuning in. It is Sunday, August 4th, 2 days before the primary. So hopefully you guys have all done some research. You've seen our candidate survey. You know what's going on locally. You know who to vote for. I hope, because if you guys aren't the responsible voters, who is? But that's the way that goes. So we will talk after the election about the things that we did. So we'll see how that all shakes out on Tuesday. But first, we have a weekly live stream, and we've got a lot to talk about. It's going to be mostly a dark stream tonight. Unfortunately, another one of those World War III streams. I had to say yet another World War III stream, because it feels like this is not the first one we've had. And it's been a very turbulent week, a very bad week for Kamala Harris, which is what happens whenever things go on in the world. It's a bad week for Kamala Harris every time, because, you know, that's when people start asking questions like, what would you do? What would you do if you were the president right now, Kamala? And that's where things all fall apart. So, of course, that cold open clip, that was from a Trump rally in Georgia earlier this week. The same location, the same venue where Kamala had a rally earlier with Megan the Stallion, T-H-E-E. She doesn't know how to spell the. And I don't know if you guys have seen that clip of Hillary and Chelsea Clinton talking about how they love that song WAP, which I'm not going to repeat what that stands for, but it's funny. The characters, the left embraces, they're not at all weird. Not at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, I'm a child of the 90s. Okay. I'm not one of these prudes, but, you know, it just seems like a weird thing for a politician, a political candidate to embrace. I don't know. It's been a bad week for women's rights in general, especially. Of course, J.D. Vance touched on that in that clip with the apparently two men beat all the women in women's boxing in the Olympics. And I don't know if they actually faced off against each other yet. I really don't watch the Olympics at all, so I don't know how that shook out. But yeah, two biological men. And I'm sure you guys have all seen these clips, I'm sure, from the South Park episode 4 years ago where they predicted men going into women's boxing is beating the crap out of women. I think the Babylon Bee had the best headline, which was, let me see if I can find it real quick. It was beating women is now an Olympic sport, something like that. Mark Ashley Price, how's it going, man? He says, regardless, I am beyond thrilled that Trump became president, period, especially for at least 4 years, and was Obama's successor. Trump is the greatest president. Obama is the worst president. Jeff Fuss on YouTube says, Kamala gives me the willies, slick Brown and Horton's willies. I'd rather be Weird than Willied. Yes. And Kamala. Let's play a couple of clips. Kamala Harris is a DEI hire. Apparently, that's something that the Republican leadership doesn't want us talking about, which we're going to talk about that a lot tonight. But first, we have a couple of clips here. So if you guys haven't seen this, let me play a couple of these for you. This is one from, I think, just a day or so ago. This is Kamala Harris talking about how cloud computing works. So here we go. Here's the clip. Yeah. Okay. So you guys probably don't need me to explain this to you, but someone needed to explain this to Kamala and failed miserably. In case you don't know, the cloud is not up here. That's not what the cloud is. And by the way, your files are. Oh no, Mark said no sound. Uh-oh. How is there no sound? I heard the sound. Oh, geez. I don't know, guys. Okay, well, for those who didn't hear the clip, I guess people didn't hear the clip. I don't know why. StreamYard's acting up. Yeah, Patty says couldn't hear Kamala. Okay. So Kamala Harris was just saying that cloud computing is where you don't have a physical copy of a file in your file drawer, but it's actually on your laptop and therefore up in the sky, up in the clouds, is what she actually said. So that is not how Stephen Gothal says better off not hearing. Well, that's true, Stephen, but that's going to be a problem if I play my next clip, won't it? So maybe we shouldn't. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what we do in a minute here. But first, those who don't know, cloud computing means not just one remote server, but a whole cloud of them have multiple copies of it. So in case there's like a distributed denial of service attack. In fact, that's the big plus of cloud computing is that if one server node is taken down, there's all kinds of additional copies. But first of all, your files are actually physically in existence somewhere. It's not like computers don't have disks, and it's not all magic that works up in the sky. There are servers, and a cloud server is a server where there's many copies of a file on different machines so that they can distribute the load. And if one or more of them goes down because of a DDoS attack or something like that, your data is not lost and your connection's not broken, and it's not going to take your website down. A file being on your laptop is not in the cloud. It becomes in the cloud when you upload it to a cloud server. That's the way that goes. Anyway, that was Kamala Harris being a complete moron. So apart from that, let me bring up my next clip here. And I don't know. Let me see if there's some way I can play this without not having sound, because that's a real bummer if we don't have sound. So let's see. Let me bring this up on the screen here and just see share screen, Brave tab. Usually this works, and it says the sound is on. I'm going to just play a second or two of this, and you guys will have to just tell me in the chat if you can hear it or not. If not, I'm so sorry, but technical stuff.
This is just an extraordinary testament.
Could you hear that? Let me know in the chat if you guys could hear that. Kamala saying this was an extraordinary testament. I'll give you guys a second here to let me know. Stephen Gothal says 5 by 5. I don't know what that means. Patty says yes. Okay, all right, let's play the clip then. This is Kamala and Joe on the tarmac where there was a exchange of prisoners between U.S. and Russia. And here's what Kamala says.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
So there you go, the power of diplomacy, a testament to the power of diplomacy. That is the only time Kamala has gone off script in the past 2 weeks since she became the presumptive nominee. And that's what tumbles out of her mouth, is this is such a powerful testimony, man, to the power of diplomacy. And let me see. Oh, it's going to reload my whole Twitter feed. That's a bummer, because I was going to also show another clip of Joe Biden walking into the plane after it's an empty plane. The prisoners were exchanged. He wasn't going anywhere. Biden just walks in the plane and Kamala's like looking up at Joe Biden, like, what the heck are you doing, buddy? Amazing. Absolutely amazing that this is this is where our country is, that someone of this caliber, having not been through any process whatsoever, no vetting by the voters at all, and the Democrats are just like, oh yeah, this is totally fine, this will completely work. But I think it probably won't work very well, because between now and November 5th, 3 months of life is going to happen. And Kamala is not quite cut out for that. So I was going to write a column this week. I know I've been like, what? You haven't written any columns in years, Adam. And I was like, I'm going to start writing columns again. I was going to do one about Kamala Harris being a DEI hire. And then I actually was looking up some details I was going to use. And Ann Coulter wrote the column for me. And better than I ever could anyway. So for those who haven't seen this, because it touches on every little detail I was going to get into. And she did all my homework for me. So I'll just pull this up because it's awesome if you haven't seen this. How Kamala climbed the peaks of DEI. So first of all, if you hadn't heard, some Republican luminaries have been saying we shouldn't talk about this DEI stuff. For those who don't know DEI, of course you guys all know this. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, aka also didn't earn it, is the acronym when you hire someone based on their race and their sex rather than their qualifications. A bad thing to do for any profession, but especially for the president of the United States. So my first thing I had to look up was, I know I've heard Republicans say this, don't go there with the DEI stuff. And of course, I couldn't remember who, but here it is, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy, the shortest tenured Speaker of the House in 100 years or so. Totally stupid. He says, look, I disagree with the DEI stuff, but she's the vice president. And the former U.S. Senator Coulter goes, yeah, so was Dan Quayle. And she goes on, but yes, that's the first thing. And then the second question is, okay, so did Joe Biden actually say, quote, I am going to hire a black woman to be the vice president? That's the second important thing you got to cover. You got to cover your bases, right? You got to cover your bases. And, my memory is like, I swear I remember Biden saying, I'm going to pick a black woman to be my vice president. People remember hearing that. It's actually what they call the Mandela effect. It's a memory that's like something you remembered. It wasn't what it actually is. And that's because Coulter covers the bases. Yeah, Ron Pickard, he said he'd hired a woman. And of course, he said he'd appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court because he's done this stunt multiple times. So he didn't actually say, I'm going to appoint a black woman. But what he did is, first of all, yes, during the debate, during one of the debates, when he was, I think, losing in the polls, he was doing terrible in the polls, Biden was. He said, I'm going to pick a woman to be my running mate. And as Coulter points out, if you guys who don't remember this, Biden came in like last place in Iowa, or like fifth place or something, did very poorly in New Hampshire, did very poorly in Iowa. And then he goes to South Carolina, comes in first place, and everybody else drops out of the race. Boom, done. Biden's the nominee. And the guy who made that happen was Jim Clyburn, very influential representative from South Carolina. And in fact, I believe it was at, whose funeral was it? Not John Conyers. The other long-serving representative, black man, civil rights leader, died. Anyway, it was at his funeral. Bill Clinton thanked James Clyburn and says, thank you for settling that family dispute, I think he called it, by which he meant the Democrat primary in 2016. So openly admitting on tip of my tongue. Come on, chat, help me out. Who was the black representative that was John Lewis? John Lewis. See, I got it, chat. I didn't need your help. At John Lewis's funeral, Bill Clinton acknowledged that Jim Clyburn basically rigged the election for Joe Biden. Anyway, so as Coulter points out, Biden owed Clyburn everything, and Clyburn himself told Biden that I want you to be, here we go. Clyburn urged Biden to pick up black women as his VP. So yeah, it was kind of, not exactly up to Joe Biden. And as we've of course seen in the past few weeks, Biden is not exactly his own agent. Oh, I'm off center here. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. My camera's a little off. There we go. Anyway, so there was that. So yes, Kamala Harris, indeed a DEI hire. And a pretty, I mean, here's the thing, folks. This is a political campaign lesson from me to you. When you go negative on your opponent, what often happens is when voters get that negative ad, they get angry about the going negative. But what happens over time is that the psychological response to that dissipates. The intellectual response remains. The substance of the attack remains. So people, you say Kamala Harris is a DEI hire. There'll be news stories. Oh, the Republicans, they went low and they talked about Kamala Harris just being hired because, and again, as pointed out by Coulter and others, perfectly fair. Because Biden made that point himself. He could have said, I picked Kamala Harris as my running mate because she was absolutely the best qualified person for the job, but he didn't. Same thing with Ketanji Brown Jackson. Could have just said, I could have not said, I'm going to appoint a black woman, and then just appointed her and said, best candidate I could find. He chose not to. He deliberately chose to let it be known that I am appointing this person. I'm choosing my running mate. That has to be a woman. So he said that. Anyway, you should point that out to people because they might be offended that you're talking about her race as if Democrats never talk about race. But at the end of the day, especially when they're seeing the recession, the wars we might be in by November, voters kind of think, I really don't want someone who's a complete moron to be our president. And that's important. Mark says, I'm scared if Trump does not win the election. I'm scared either way, Mark. This is a very dangerous time. This is a very dangerous time, and we should talk about that now. So, one more thing I want to mention about Kamala before we move on, though. This is another story. Bully Kamala Harris berated staff, left them in tears after berating them with F-bombs. Intern told never to make eye contact. Oh, you know who else died recently? Another black icon, Sheila Jackson Lee. If you haven't seen this article, and I didn't pull this up because I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but Sheila Jackson Lee was very famous for being one of the nastiest people in Washington. In fact, there's a story, a very long story actually, about her this was from years ago. I'll pull it up. In Daily Caller. Here we go. Congressional bosses from hell, Sheila Jackson Lee. And man, this is, I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but the abuse that you see from this politician towards staff. Capitol is famous for its demanding and sensitive bosses, even by the harsh standards. Sheila Jackson Lee stands out. There was a staffer who only ever called her staffer MF. Only ever. That was the only name. Never called her. Anyway, this goes on. It's a very long article. So I'm not going to belabor it. But a lot of people have had the experience of abusive bosses, and they know what that means. And it's especially common in politics. But abusive bosses are people that, when you know abusers, they, you bear a visceral dislike for them. So that's an important thing to know about too, is the fact that Kamala has a high staff turnover rate. That's always a red flag. Always a red flag that someone should not ever be in power. And that, by the way, also applies to some of these people in Lansing too, and they know who they are. Anyway, so the big story, of course, this week is the assassination of a Hamas official in Iran, or I guess Iran is how it's preferred to be pronounced, but whatever. A lot of questions in the media. Was it a bomb that was placed months ago? Is one story. Another was that the hotel was hit by a missile. I don't know if the details matter all that much. Israel claims that it was a Hamas terrorist official and that they were involved in some kind of high terrorist incident in Beirut in the 1980s. Apparently that is not correct. That's another guy. But at any rate, humiliating for Iran without any question. And obviously, but also, well, there's a lot to unpack about this whole incident. The biggest thing, of course, being that this now and Iran has said, is almost certainly going to mean war. Apparently, American officials are urging Iran to exercise restraint, which is a little strange because if they didn't respond by some kind of military action against Israel, what would the American media be saying? Those weak, pathetic Iranians, they're not going to do anything. What would Israel do if Iran did nothing? So obviously, Iran's going to do something, probably something bad, and the potential for. And again, look, I know that Middle East is a controversial topic within the GOP, and be that as it may, a couple of facts need to be borne in mind. One is that this guy was apparently the lead Hamas negotiator, which is a problem if you are, trying to show that you are negotiating good faith when you kill the other negotiating party. That's not a good look for a good faith effort. But obviously, the intention is to create a war. I mean, what more could Israel be doing right now to create a war? There's also, by the way, of course, a blanket alert all across Lebanon, the U.S., I think Britain, other countries. Every single person out now. Get out. Obviously, because they know there's bombs are coming. So an open war now with that. And by the way, what was the catalyst to this incident? Reportedly, 12 innocent people were killed in the Golan Heights, which is a disputed territory in, I want to say Jordan, but maybe it's Lebanon or maybe it's Syria. It's the Golan Heights. Not Israelis or Jews, mind you. Is they're called Druze. They're like I think they're kind of Christian. Hard to even imagine why Hezbollah would kill 12 innocent, non-Israeli, non-Jewish children in a disputed territory. Doesn't sound. I mean, maybe an accident occurred, maybe something else happened, maybe a false flag, something or other. Anyway, they're going to war apparently. Lots of saber rattling in Turkey, which the Turkish President Erdogan is known to be a blowhard. But then again, this is kind of it's getting real, really quickly. And I want to play a clip real quick. I got to pull it up here though. This is Colonel Doug McGregor, who was a Trump administration advisor, and talking to Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis about what's going on right now and where the motivation would be coming from. So let me open this video up real quick. Hold on. Let me get the clip going here. Here we go. Here it is. Okay. Let me know if you can't hear it or anything.
And that analysis is there is no incentive to wait. This is the time to...
He's talking about the motivation of the U.S. and Israel for going right now, or particularly Israel. Here we go.
Strike. If there were ever a point in Israel's history where it has the chance to establish its unchallenged supremacy in the region, it's now. All of its surrounding neighbors are very weak. We're talking about the Arab states. They're very weak. There's very little that they can do. They may have numbers, they may have large numbers of equipment, but they're not oriented to offensive warfare, and there's not much they can do to intervene to change things. If they could, they'd have already done it. So that means that within the region, your principal concern, other than Hezbollah, is Iran, and they dismiss out of hand the possibility that Turkey will ever do anything. I mean, that's the conventional wisdom in Israel. No, the Turks won't intervene. We can ignore that. It's sort of similar to the Germans in 1914, who absolutely did not believe that the British would intervene. Similar mentality. So from their vantage point, you're never going to have a better shot because you really have now, if you're Mr. Netanyahu sitting in Jerusalem, you have absolute control of the United States Armed Forces and its capacities. But you're a realist. That's not going to last forever. You don't know what the next election is going to bring. Yeah, sure. You've essentially bought what I call the right wing of the Uniparty, which we call Republican. That's purchased. But is it reliable over the long haul? May or may not be. Then you have the left wing of the Uniparty under Kamala Harris. You've got serious reservations about it because They call themselves the party of color. They're distinctly racist in their attitudes towards white people, and they don't like Israel. So, you got to put yourself in the position of Mr. Netanyahu, and you say, if I have to pick a point in time to do this, this is it. So let's pull out all the stops. Let's go for broke, and we can win everything at one stroke. Okay. See how that works out.
Yeah, see how that works out. Well, I don't know, guys. We've underestimated the Russians pretty badly. I don't know, but I suspect we may be underestimating the others too. Remember what was the Biden administration planning on a few months ago, or even, well, maybe not a few months. Sorry, let's go back further. A couple of years ago, we would crush Russia militarily and economically, overthrow the Putin regime. The Middle East would be a cakewalk. Nothing bad's going to happen in the Middle East. Remember, literally like the day before October 7th, when I think it was Anthony Blinken says, the Middle East is quiet. Everything's great. No problems at all. We're going to crush Russia and pivot to crushing China. Well, we are now all in Russia already, in Ukraine, fighting Russia as a proxy, which, by the way, if we have a war in the Middle East, where are we going to get more artillery shells from? Because we didn't, we've kind of been depleting our supplies fighting the Russians. So that's not going well. So if there is a war in the Middle East and Israel says, and clearly, overwhelmingly, there's no question, if a wider war breaks out, we are going to come to Israel's support. No question, we're coming to Israel's side. Now we're fighting a major war on two fronts. I feel like I remember a time when World War II, that was it. When the whole world went to war and we kind of came in late near the end, and the Russians and the Europeans had just spent the last several years killing each other. And suddenly we were the dominant world power because everybody else had spent most of their energy fighting one another. That worked out really nicely for us. What's going to happen when the United States and the Arabs and the Persians and the Russians and the Ukrainians have gone through all of their military supplies fighting one another, and then China just comes in maybe late in the game, having a bigger military industrial output than all of us combined? I wonder who the next world power might be. Sounds like a bad plan. Sounds like a bad plan to me. And all of this, I think, is going to be to Trump's benefit in the election. No question about that. In fact, you could clearly, if you'd seen Netanyahu's trip to Congress, I think it was this, not this past week, the week before, he clearly doesn't give a crap about what the Democrats think. He's expecting Trump to win. Like he knows something. And the whole world wants Trump to win too, by the way, because they don't like not knowing what Biden's going to, they don't know who's in charge in this country even, let alone what's going to happen next. Yeah, Jason Mickelborg says, maybe we can buy our stuff back from the Taliban. Yeah. At a premium. At a premium. And nobody in the media is talking about any of this stuff right now. But there's no question. All of this is the last thing the Biden regime would want. This is not good for their election prospects at all. They are not in control at all. But this might all be great for Trump winning the election. But I don't think it bodes well for the Trump second presidency, by the way, guys. So what's he going to do? He might shut down the war in Ukraine. Maybe. I mean, he's going to have that perfect phone call with Putin, right? How's that going to go? Yeah, we're going to freeze the conflict, right? No. Russia's already said for 100 times now, we're not freezing anything until we have a negotiation. And until then, we're not stopping. So what's going to happen there? Is Trump going to just say, okay, well, then we admit you keep your 4 territories plus Crimea. and Ukraine will never be part of NATO, and you can talk to them about the terms of their surrender. I don't think Trump's going to want to be in that position because he's going to look weak. He won't like that. The media's going to call him weak. So what's he going to do about the Middle East? Who's going to listen to him? Israel? He is going to inherit a very, very bad situation, and one where being extremely blustery is not going to work well, I don't think. John King says oil prices may go up, but then we can tap into the strategic oil reserve. Oh wait, it's been depleted by quite a bit. Yeah, Biden drained that to win the election. Jason Nickelborg says doesn't matter. They will try to impeach him again. Go scorched earth on the Dems. Yeah. Well, that's all fine for domestic politics, but that's not going to still be good for the country. I'm not saying there's an easy answer, guys. I'm saying this is a very bad situation that's going to be a lot worse, irretrievably so, by the November election. But I'm also not reassured by this other story that's come out recently. This is, I think, just a week ago. No, a little more than a week ago now. But if you haven't seen this article, this just came out a little while ago. It's weird. Now, you guys may have seen the story that Project 2025 director was knocked off. Where is that? I don't have the clip handy, but anyway, you know, Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation, a bunch of former Trump administration officials had a very strong plan to do a whole bunch of things, and it did not go over well politically for Trump. Oh, here we go. Here's the article I was looking for. Project 2025 director forced out by the Trump campaign manager because apparently Trump does not appreciate when others try to speak for him, and when people are giving the impression that they represent what Trump will do when in office. And this Project 2025 stuff obviously was so very bad and very radical. Look at these radical things it was going to do. Slashing of the federal government programs, while also eliminating the Department of Education, the thing Republicans used to have in their platform, and regulations on clean air and clean water. Experts who work for government agencies would be replaced by conservative loyalists who would be chosen for their personal fealty to Donald Trump. Oh, you mean the president elected by the American people is to have a loyal administration, not a disloyal bureaucracy that was never elected? Imagine that. So Trump campaign manager Chris LaCivita went after the guy, I forget what his first name is, Paul Dans. And LaCivita also has worked to shut down the team behind promoting the plan. Wow. Okay. So Trump doesn't like those guys, despite the fact that many of his own former officials had a hand in writing it, and despite the fact that he's embraced many of its ideas. Trump distanced himself from that. Now, that's all well and good, right? If you want to be elected, it's not good to have a huge policy plan that any voter can find any one little thing that they don't like and then oppose you for. I get that. Well then, what about this? Because this came out a week and a half ago. A Trump peace plan for Ukraine. Among the essentials are a Lend-Lease program. Hey, New Deal. All right. Real sanctions on Russia. Oh, that'll work, because the sanctions up to this point have been totally fake and totally haven't benefit Russia. And the best part, a revitalized NATO. Wow, that sounds great. A Trump peace plan. Well, I would certainly hope that the people pushing this quote-unquote Trump peace plan, clearly trying to market it as what Trump would do if he was back in the White House, would not be anybody that people might mistake for a Trump official, because otherwise Trump might want to distance himself from them, right? Oh, Mike Pompeo and David Urban. Who are these guys? Here's what they say. Pundits claim that if Trump was reelected, he would cut off aid to Ukraine, I hope, give away its territory. Its territory's gone. Russia took it. And they had a vote, too, by the way. They had a vote. You might think that's unfair and that's illegal. Funny thing, the way that the idea that you could have an election and a referendum on independence was opposed by Russia and supported by the United States and put into international law. Remember Kosovo? Remember when Kosovo broke away from Yugoslavia? And Russia said, you can't do that. There's no provision in the Constitution for breaking up a state just by having an election. The United States said, we're going to have a rules-based international order here. We lobbied for that. So, okay. So Russia went into the 4 territories, the Donbass, Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye, and the local population had elections. So we want to break out of Ukraine and join Russia, which they did. Anyway, so this territory that Mike Pompeo claims is still Ukrainian, and he warns pundits claim that Trump would deal directly with Vladimir Putin to impose an ignominious peace on the country. Yeah, it's ignominious when you lose the war. That's what happens. Anyway, Mike Pompeo says there's no evidence that such capitulation will be a part of President Trump's policy, and much evidence to the contrary. It was Trump who did yada, 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 yada. I'm not going to read the whole article. Now, okay. By the way, who's Mike Pompeo and who's that other guy, David Urban? Turns out, people that might actually personally profit from this idea. So here's the article. Wall Street Journal omits major Pompeo conflict of interest in the Trump peace plan. Turns out, Pompeo is the board member of a Ukrainian telecommunications company. Oh, by the way, I don't know if that's clip handy, but you also guys see that Kellyanne Conway is now a registered lobbyist for Ukraine. How come Trump hasn't denounced any of this stuff? Isn't that weird? He really made a point to distance himself from Project 2025 because they were apparently politically inconvenient for him. But his former Secretary of State, who's clearly representing himself as speaking for Trump and what Trump's campaign, what a second Trump administration's policies will be, who is himself a Ukrainian agent. And here's the other guy, David Urban. They mentioned who he is in here somewhere. Oh, David Urban, managing director of a DC lobbyist that counts a member of Ukrainian's parliament, an advisor to Vladimir Zelensky, and Raytheon, a military industrial complex company, as his clients. This is just a little disconcerting. Just a little disconcerting. I don't mind Trump distancing himself from Project 2025, but why shouldn't he apply that elsewhere? Because if I recall correctly, some of you guys in the chat maybe went to the RNC. Wasn't Mike Pompeo a speaker at the RNC? I believe he was. I think Kellyanne Conway was too, was she not? Little upsetting. Jason Mickelborg says, remove the tax obligation to seniors on Social Security. How draconian. Yeah. I don't particularly care for taxing Social Security twice. Once in your paycheck and then once again later. And yes, they both were, as Mindy and Jason are saying in the chat. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. See, this is why sometimes it is important, for people to get messages to the Trump people that, hey guys, sometimes there's things that are a little disconcerting that we, would maybe not appreciate. But I say all this also because there was an incident this past week, which I have to say, I am very, very personally upset about. And I hope I don't show it too much tonight. In fact, I was thinking a couple nights ago, I might have to make this a Rumble only stream, just because I might say some things that I couldn't say on YouTube without getting sanctioned. And then I thought better of it, because that'd probably not be good for me in general to be using that kind of language. But I have to talk about this incident with Kyle Rittenhouse. For those who haven't heard, and maybe you guys don't need to be reminded, but let me just set the table here. Kyle Rittenhouse has been through a lot in his 21 years on this earth, more than most of us have. In fact, it was during the summer of 2020 when, as part of their effort to make sure that Trump was defeated in the November election, Democrats across America were staging riots. And in particular, there was a riot one night in Kenosha, Wisconsin, when a 17-year-old, Kyle Rittenhouse, went to try to protect the city of Kenosha, Wisconsin, was actually cleaning up graffiti, and saw fit to protect himself with a rifle, a AR-15 rifle, no less, when not less than 3 people, in fact, I believe it was 4, tried to murder him for impeding their destruction. One of them, what was this guy's name? The first one, the one who fought for control of Kyle's gun, who had his hand on the barrel, which makes him an imminent deadly force threat. Joseph Rosenbaum, was that his name? A child molester, a child rapist, Joseph Rosenbaum, who had his hand on Kyle Rittenhouse's rifle and thereby was trying to take it from him and kill him with it. The second, what was the other guy's name? Shoot, I can't remember it. Let's call him Skateboard Man. Tried to beat Kyle to death with his skateboard, tried to crush his skull with his skateboard, tried to smash him with the trucks of his skateboard, which could easily incapacitate you. Who is also, by the way, someone that I think put a knife to his sister's throat, if I'm not mistaken. Anthony Huber, that was the guy's name, right? Anthony Huber. When Kyle to shoot him to death to protect his own life. And then the third, Gage Grosskreutz, who was a drug dealer, and who Kyle to shoot when he had his own pistol pointed at Kyle's head. 3 times in one night, Kyle Rittenhouse defended his life from a left-wing mob that was bent on lynching him. And that was only the beginning of what Kyle Rittenhouse had to go through at age 17. Because for the next year, the prosecutor, I want to say I forget the name of the county, but the county prosecutor, I believe, Richard Binger, right? Little Binger, as we used to call him, charged Kyle with murder for all of those charges. And he was, I believe, incarcerated for the entire duration of that period, I'm pretty sure. And thanks to, frankly, a lot of very wise choices by Kyle, at age 17, he was acquitted by a jury of his peers, really a jury of adults, people much older than him, but we say a jury of our peers. And again, I say based on a lot of wise decisions by Kyle, because it's not like when you're charged with murder, just because the facts are on your side, you automatically win. You have to have good counsel. You have to have the wisdom to decide who is acting in your interest and who is not, which instantaneously, remember, Kyle was made a national celebrity, and in many cases, made into a target. He was lied about in the mass media endlessly. He was falsely accused of doing something illegal by transporting the gun across state lines, which was not true. He was falsely accused of shooting black people, despite the fact that none of them were black. To this day, these lies persist. Platforms that were crowdfunding his legal defense were shut down for doing so. He was made into a pariah. And he had to make the incredibly hard decision to whether or not to take the stand. He had to endure hours and hours of cross-examination. All of those things took an extraordinary amount of wisdom beyond his years. And these are all things, every single thing I just talked about, are things that probably none of us could have done. None of us. You, me, any of us. Any of us. Yeah, he did all that. I say all this to underscore something before I get into where we're at here with what I'm about to talk about. Nobody on the planet is owed anything by Kyle Rittenhouse. Quite the opposite, actually. We owe him something. Because had that case gone differently, and Kyle was in jail, that would have redounded on all of us. And by us, I mean every gun owner in America would have been the target of public opinion at the very least. At the very least. Anyway, so here's what happened this past week. Kyle Rittenhouse went on Twitter, X, excuse me, used to be called Twitter, now it's called X, and had the audacity, and I can't show you the post anymore because it's been taken down for reasons I'll explain in a moment, to say he had posted a picture of himself with Ron Paul. Ron Paul. And he said, I had an honor to meet Congressman Ron Paul. He is my role model. I am going to write him in for President of the United States this November 5th. Well, you can probably guess what happened next, can't you? Yeah, MAGA was not happy with Kyle. And he got absolutely bombarded on Twitter from people disowning him. As if they owned him to begin with, by the way. Let's start with that. By the way, a couple of points I need to make here. Besides Kyle not owing anybody anything, he is also a man entitled to his opinion. And let me say something else about Kyle that you might not know. After it was all said and done, after the trial was over, Kyle was hired by an organization called Texas Gun Rights. And I believe also, perhaps, its parent organization called the National Association for Gun Rights, I think he's president now. I think he used to be executive vice president. It was Dudley Brown, who founded a group called Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, a Colorado-based gun rights group. Now, why do I mention all this? Because guess who else got targeted in the campaign? National Association for Gun Rights and Texas Gun Rights. Now, a thing that you should keep in mind here. Kyle, after his trial, was basically unemployable. Who in America would want to hire a kid who, all else being equal, is a pariah? That if anybody found out they had hired Kyle Rittenhouse, would be the target of a boycott. So why would they hire Kyle when they have a whole world of other qualified employees, applicants to hire, where Kyle's got that one minor thing of, being a famously hated criminal defendant, even though he was acquitted? Doesn't matter. So Kyle was basically unemployable, except perhaps by a very small number of organizations out there that wouldn't care because they're expressly conservative. But you got to also remember, their companies too, those conservative organizations. And many of them did nothing for Kyle. Many of them assumed Kyle would be convicted. Remember Black Rifle Coffee? The coffee company that marketed itself as a big patriot right-wing coffee company. And then when Kyle after he was arraigned, threw him under the bus, called him a murderer, I believe. So maybe some tiny sliver of companies out there might have hired Kyle after this had all gone down, but only one did, which is the National Association for Gun Rights, or maybe it was Texas Gun Rights. I'm not sure which. But I actually got to meet Kyle a year or so ago when he was up north. He was at an event, and he was brought there, I think, by Great Lakes Gun Rights, which is also affiliated with the National Association for Gun Rights. Now, in the course of their attacking Kyle on the internet, and of course attacking the National Association for Gun Rights and their state affiliates, it was brought to people's attention that apparently Dudley Brown, the president of the organization, is himself a never Trumper. Now, I would say I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I know it is true. And I'll tell you how I know. You see, in 2016, I went on Facebook and I posted a photo. Let me see if I can find it on the fly. I didn't think to queue this up, but I posted a ballot selfie of myself voting for Donald J. Trump in the 2016 Michigan Republican primary election back in March 2016. Now, you might recall that in March of 2016, Donald Trump was not yet the nominee. He was not exactly the most popular Republican. In fact, I think Ted Cruz got the most votes in Michigan in that election. I think Trump got 27% of the vote in Michigan. Anyway, I posted a ballot selfie. I'm trying to find the photo, but I've got it someplace here. I'm not going to keep searching for it, but I did. And Dudley Brown on my Facebook page posted in response to it, Adam, I always knew you were an idiot. I think I actually deleted that because I was so mad about it, but I wish I'd saved it. Hey, I don't mind Dudley. And here's the thing. Here's the thing, by the way, guys. And for some of you, this might sting. Trump's Second Amendment record sucked. Did. Now, you might say, there's other issues, Adam. Okay, fine. I agree. But the National Association of Gun Rights is a single issue group whose only issue is gun rights. Yeah, here, look at this. Remember this, folks? Donald J. Trump, February 22nd, 2018. I will be strongly emphasizing pushing comprehensive background checks with an emphasis on mental health, raise the age to 21, and end sale of bump stocks. Congress is in a mood to finally do something on this issue. I hope. That was Donald J. Trump on gun rights. President Trump on gun rights. Now, as it happened, a bill never went to his desk, but he actually passed an order on the bump stock ban. I believe this article has the mention of it. If not, you guys can look it up. Here we go. Trump administration issues rule banning bump stocks more than a year after the Las Vegas rampage. So that was Trump's record. Now, I guess what you guys, I can hear you guys already. I can hear you already. Well, he won't be as bad as Kamala Harris. Well, the president doesn't write laws and he doesn't vote on them. He only can choose to sign them or not. And Trump clearly signaled he would sign them. Why wouldn't he, by the way? Remember, they passed budgets he didn't like and he grudgingly signed those anyway, too? So, again, maybe you would support Trump anyway. I don't blame you. But maybe cut Dudley Brown a little slack if, as the president of an organization whose position is to be a no-compromise gun rights group, you understand why he might have no love for Trump when there's other Republicans who have never done things that actively oppose the Second Amendment. Just saying. But maybe I'm digressing here. Because they went after, and when I say everyone, I mean thousands of people. Here's one example of many. This is Cat Turd, well named. I've never in my life, following politics for 40 years, seen a bigger betrayal than Kyle Rittenhouse. Did Kyle Rittenhouse, I already went over this. Kyle didn't owe you anything, Cat Turd. The left was trying to put him in prison for life. And MAGA came to the rescue, and so did Trump. No, he didn't. Trump didn't say one word about Kyle. Let the judicial process play out is what Trump's position was. Now, maybe some of us, and I know I did, contributed to his legal defense. Is that just because of MAGA? Really? Because it sounds to me like MAGA is claiming ownership of every single Second Amendment supporter in America. This is what Catherine goes on to say. We promoted him, financed him, prayed for him, and on and on. That arrogant video he made was a slap in the face to everyone who carried him for years. Never seen such a delusional, egotistical, out-of-touch video in my life. You know, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. But isn't the right to privacy at the ballot, you know, that thing the left's always talking about? Isn't this exactly why? Because they don't want people being bullied and browbeaten into having a political position? Isn't that what that was all about? I've never seen a betrayal of this magnitude aimed at the people who literally saved his life. Imagine the audacity. I mean, honestly, guys, maybe you think I'm going off on a big tangent here. This story infuriates me more than I can say. And the well, let me show you what happens next. This is the aftermath. This is what Kyle ended up posting. Over the past 12 hours, I've had a series of productive conversations with members of the Trump's team, and I am confident he will be the strong ally for gun owners needed to the strong ally gun owners need to defend our Second Amendment rights. My comments made last night were ill-informed and unproductive. I'm 100% behind Donald Trump and encourage every gun owner to join me in helping send him back to the White House. So the struggle session worked. The struggle session worked. Because that's what that is, guys. That's what this was. This was leftist bully tactics. They got him to delete his tweet, apologize for it, say it was ill-informed and unproductive. I'm behind Donald Trump. Of course, Texas gun rights had to do that too. Which, by the way, let me give you guys some deep history for those who don't know. The National Association for Gun Rights was founded by people that got fired from Gun Owners of America because they stuck by their principles and went after a politician that unfortunately a big donor wasn't happy about. And Gun Owners of America, the organization that they splintered from, itself splintered off of the NRA. It used to be like a division of the NRA. And then when the NRA supported the Brady Law, that was when GOA split off. So that's the history of these gun rights groups. I can tell you firsthand, folks, I was in Congress in 2013 when they were pushing for gun control after Sandy Hook. The NRA wasn't opposed to any of the things the Democrats were demanding back then. It was GOA and the National Association for Gun Rights. GOA sent in a lot of letters. NAGR dropped a lot of really, really hard-hitting ads and made a lot of politicians intensely sorry for supporting what the left was going after. The same thing as Trump, by the way, was just supporting the comprehensive background check, which is a code word for universal gun registration, just so you know. So, the No Compromise Gun Rights Group, forced to compromise by MAGA. And someone made a great point here. Where was it? Let me find it. Hold on. Yeah, this is a comment from Pedro Gonzalez, who, to be fair, is a never Trumper. So let's just, for disclosure. But he makes this point. Had they just left Kyle alone to endorse Ron Paul, nobody would have cared. It would have been a non-issue. But by mobbing him, it's likely that even more people will now be emboldened to not vote for Trump because they don't want to reward the mob mentality. And he's right. I mean, like I said, I am blood-boiling angry. How dare they have the nerve to go after Kyle as if he owed them anything? Look at what's in these punks write. Listen, Scott Greer, 6'2", IQ 187, an egomaniac. Rittenhouse made a mistake. Who's he to say? People called him out for it. He then wisely corrected the error. All in all, a successful social media campaign. A mob. A disgusting, disgraceful mob. Look at this one. Joey Manarino. Another egomaniac. I'm guessing that's not his real last name, Manarino, but who knows? Compensating much. Kyle Rittenhouse apologized and came back to MAGA. We can stop attacking him now. This is why I have to put intense pressure on people. Makes you sick. Makes me sick anyway. Cernovich gets it. This is Cernovich. Trump's campaign manager defended the Secret Service's handling of the Trump assassination attempt and is hiring never Trumpers, including, by the way, recently, guess who they hired to do election integrity in Georgia? One of Brad Ratberger's lieutenants. You know, Brad Ratberger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, the guy who denied all the fraud in Georgia in 2020? Yeah, they hired him, his staffer, to be their election integrity guy. in Georgia. But y'all want to be mad at Kyle Rittenhouse because you're chicken shit pussies. You won't call out real power. Pathetic people. Growlers, no honor. Thank you, Mike Cernovich. Much appreciated. Look at this guy. In a mood, I see. Cernovich, shut up, dork. Good job, Cernovich. Anyway. Yeah, here's another Catherine follow-up post. I was harder on you than anyone, but I can't hold a grudge when a man apologizes. Just remember, when it was political poison to take your side, Trump and MAGA was there for you during your lowest point. Yeah, lecture him some more. These people are proud of themselves. They should be ashamed. They should be ashamed. Now, obviously, Trump didn't do that. And obviously, not all of his supporters did. That was an online mob. But I ask again, where is Trump distancing from? Trump had no problem distancing himself from Project 2025 because they're apparently too conservative. He has no objections to Mike Pompeo speaking for him. Where do you think these MAGA guys got their attitude on Twitter to start mobbing people like that, to go after Kyle Rittenhouse? I am sincerely troubled by this. And maybe you guys aren't, and I know what some of you are thinking. Adam, you're hurting Trump. Well, apparently Trump has decided he doesn't need conservatives' help. He snubbed us in the platform, attacked him in the convention. He relished in going after Bob Good and defeating him, knocking out a hardcore conservative patriot, replaced him with a bootlicker, probably a rhino. These are not encouraging things, guys. I'll probably come around at some point sooner or later, depending on how circumstances shake out. But if you want Trump to win, and I certainly want Kamala to lose, we should be disturbed by this. And I don't think silence is the right attitude, because when you don't speak out against bad behavior, you get more of it. By the way, Left of Center says, looking like a skinny legend, Adam. Thank you, sir. Or ma'am. Appreciate that. I don't know if it's true or not, but thank you. Charlotte Cosmic on Rumble says, yes, Adam, I laid low and those X marks cause because I remembered all the stuff, but they did the pecking order with Kyle. I couldn't quite follow that. Sandy Hook was crazy, and what doing to Alex Jones is insane. The same cult behind it. What about Hitler SOS Benson address on selection today? Did Benson say something? I was going to cover as an additional story for those who haven't seen. I don't want to move on too fast, but since she brought up, he or she, Charlotte, I assume Charlotte's a woman, brought this story up. Benson got shut down at the state court level by a Whitmer appointee, no less, for this signature presumption that has no basis in law anywhere. Good news. Christine Chrislieb. That name sounds familiar. I think she's someone I might know, I believe. I think a supporter of ours. Excellent story, by the way. Unfortunately, the problem is Michigan clerics who are liberals might still be free to presume signatures are valid. So there's still a lot more work to be done. By the way, folks, I have heard that we are doing very poorly in recruiting poll workers, which is amazing because I know a ton of people who are talking about becoming poll workers and protecting the integrity of our elections. So might want to get on that. There's still time to sign up to be a poll worker for the November election. Also, Left of Center did say this. I agree Kyle's not guilty, but he's an example of failed parenting. No good parent let their child go unattended to what was basically a war zone. Maybe so. That's your opinion. You're free to have it. Doesn't mean he should have been killed. Let's say taking that gun across state lines was illegal. Let's say having that gun was illegal. Doesn't mean you have to lay down and die. Mindy Teets says, side note, not going back to Iran. Sorry about the little itch I had there. The Spectator Index on Twitter has breaking news that Secretary of State Tony Blinken told G7 folks that Iran could launch an attack on Israel in the next 24 to 48 hours. Surprised? No, not at all. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, actually. But we'll see. Oh, and the world markets are crashing, apparently. Yes, I've been seeing those stories as well. Warren Buffett tracker on Twitter says he sold half of his Apple stock, over $50 billion worth. Yeah, a lot of bad things happening economically. And that is also an indication, folks, because, remember when Trump got elected and instantaneously there was a big market bump on what I think the business world said was hope? Usually that's what that means. The world probably thinks Trump's going to win this election. However, the world probably also thinks it won't matter. Bad news. Bad news. What else is in the world this week? Oh, one more thing. And then I guess we'll call it a stream. It's already past an hour. Wow, my voice is getting tired too. Some news about the shooter. Remember that story? It's been memory hold by the media, but there was a assassination of Trump a couple weeks ago, which I hate that we have to say was a failed assassination. I mean, technically it was, but operationally it was a success. Just happens the shooter missed, but he shot Trump. Just not fatally. Anyway, the whole media told the world that the shooter was apparently a Republican, because that's a believable story. The guy who shoots Trump was a Republican. Sure. I have family members who said they'd be happy to shoot Trump. Guess what? That family member is not a Republican. Just saying. Pretty sure there's some Democrats out there, more than Republicans, that would actually shoot Trump. But that was the story the media was going with. Not that there could possibly be any other reason why this guy was a Republican. Not like there's any crossover voting in primary elections or anything like that. But the FBI told Congress, I think it was in the Senate hearing. I could be wrong. Maybe it was the House Homeland Security Committee hearing, maybe. I don't know. But the FBI claimed they knew the guy was a Trump supporter. And then it turns out that actually the guy had an account on Gab. And wouldn't you know, he's arguing with, of all people, cat shit. And a bunch of other people. And he posts some of the shooter's Gab posts. Because apparently the deep state didn't think to check his Gab feed. And sure enough, the guy is a raving liberal, supporting illegal immigration and all the rest of that stuff. Another big fat lie. Amazing. It's me again. Sai says, yeah, he's trying to kill Trump because he's a Trump supporter. Yeah, I know. It's an amazing story. Who would have thought it turned out to be false? That's what the media is going to continue to say. Charlotte Cosmic says, yes, Benson put out a letter on X today. Okay, I will look this up just because you guys are talking about it. What has Benson said on X today? I guess I am behind in the news. What is the story I'm looking for? Investigating Elon Musk's PAC. Is that the story, guys? Well, whatever. It's an investigation. Ooh. The election's in 3 months, guys. 3 months. James Shad says, what are the chances that Kamala Harris doesn't become the Democratic nominee? Nothing would surprise me at this point after what has happened this summer already. I would say virtually nothing. Virtually none. I mean, there was a lot of stories, a lot of chatter this past week and 2 weeks ago about a lot of palace intrigue about the Clintons versus the Obamas and who wanted whom. There was no viable alternative in the Democratic Party ever. I mean, what are they going to do? She's the vice president and a black female. So who was going to try to run against that? You can't beat something with nothing, and nobody else was going to run. So end of it. I mean, that ends it right there. Yeah, John C. King. I think we had to talk about this last week's stream too. Why would Ray suggest to Congress that Trump wasn't shot? And maybe fragments of shattered cloud. Yes, insanely bizarre and suspicious. The Democrats posted a picture on Twitter about the Democratic National Convention with Kamala in front of a bunch of signs that say Michelle. Yeah, that was not obviously the upcoming convention. That's a past convention. So whatever. It's me again, Cy. Says San Antonio woman arrested with handgun in D.C. after threatening Trump. There you go. Well, we don't need to just talk about random headlines at this point, guys. I just don't have to say for tonight. Election day is Tuesday. If you haven't already voted, you can still vote early. You can vote tomorrow. You can vote absentee tomorrow. I'd recommend doing that over early voting. You know why? Because then you're on the list as an absentee voter. And that's something campaigns prefer. They will do more to win absentee votes. They care about those voters more, trust me. So, just saying. Since we're talking about some random headlines, by the way, one of those news aggregators that was really big at getting the MAGA mob whipped up in a lather at Kyle Rittenhouse was one I actually have been using a lot, which is citizenfreepress.com. I don't like them anymore now because of that. So I'm finding some new ones. You haven't seen offthepress.com, similar conservative drudge alternative. I like them. Another one is called, I just found this one called the Liberty Daily. Similar drudge style headlines. Another one to go to for, if you just want to get a pile of headlines, there you go. There's some more options out there for those who might be looking for an alternative that does not, try to incite people against patriots like Kyle Rittenhouse. Greenu says on X is why don't I like Citizen Free Press? Well, in my humble opinion, they were helping incite folks against Kyle Rittenhouse by publicizing that article about him. And they just also have a lot of really nasty takes about foreign policy stuff. So I don't hate them, but I'm looking for alternatives. It's not good to rely on any one news outlet anyway. So just my humble opinion. All right, guys, that will do it for us for tonight. After Tuesday, maybe sometime later this week, we will have a post-election stream. If not, it will be next Sunday. But we will have our usual weekly live stream next Sunday at 9 p.m. as always, hopefully with some extra special guests to talk about the elections. So we'll see how that goes. Until next time, as always, guys, thanks for all you for liberty. And until then, peace.